Hi, this is Tamara from mooglyblog.com, and in this video, I'm going to be demonstrating how to crochet the Yin Yang Cat Bed, which is a free pattern you'll find on mooglyblog.com. Please go to the link in the description or go to your favorite search engine and simply type in Yin Yang Cat Bed Moogly, and it should pop right up. The Yin Yang Cat Bed is an oversized pet bed perfect for cats and small dogs. You need a USL 8mm crochet hook, less than 500 yards of Bernat blanket. I used 2 skeins of the coal or black colorway and 1 skein of the vintage white. This is the 6 super bulky sized Bernat blanket. It also helps to have some stitch markers. Let's go ahead and get started making our Yin Yang cat bed. The Yin Yang cat bed measures approximately 22 inches across from edge to edge, so it's just a little bit bigger than standard large cat beds or pet beds. It also features 3 pieces, a base and then 2 circles, which are then sewn on to create extra padding bits and to create the look of the yin yang. The base itself is quite simple, a flat circle that is worked in turn rounds, and then we simply work in our black along the sides. The edges themselves are folded over to create the stand-up sides of the cat bed. This way, since they're not stuffed and sewn down, it's a lot easier to throw it into the washer and dryer and get it to dry again quickly for use. Rounds 1 through 15 of this base, as I mentioned, are made using turned rounds where we join with a slip stitch and then work back the other direction, back and forth. This lets us work white stitches into white stitches and black stitches into black stitches. Of course, you can use whichever colors you'd like. When we make those circles then, those are actually made using spirals. So with this pattern, we get to explore a few different ways to make crochet circles. Let's go ahead and get started. First, let's make the base where we work our turned rounds. Now, the original, of course, is made in black and white, like an original yin yang, but I'm going to use other colors today because they're a little bit easier to see on camera. When you are making the original, especially with the black yarn, make sure you've got some nice bright lighting so that you can see your stitches. So let's begin round 1 with color A. This, in my original, would have been the black yarn. So I'm going to begin by making a magic circle. So I go over my finger twice towards me. Let's do that again. Once, twice. And then I insert my hook under both of those loops. I catch the loop that's furthest back. Oop, let me try that again. There we go. And just pull that right in front of the other loop. You can see I'm still holding onto that tail there. I'm going to yarn over and pull my loop through. And now I'm going to go ahead and start stitching my stitches into round 1. So first thing we want to do is chain 1 for our turning chain. And then we're going to work 10 half double crochets into the ring and then join. So I'm going to go ahead and yarn over, go into that ring. And when I go into that ring, I want to make sure that that tail also goes over my hook. This will allow me to pull on that tail to close up the ring, making it the magic ring. So there is our first half double crochet. I'm going to go ahead and grab one of those stitch markers and mark the first stitch of this round. Now the stitch markers will come in handier when we're making our spirals, but you can still absolutely use them here while making the base if you'd like. So there's 1 half double crochet. I want to make a total of 10. So I yarn over, go into the ring, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through all the 3 there. That's 2 of our stitches, and now I'm going to go ahead and make the rest. Alrighty, so here we are. I've made my 10 half double crochets into the ring. Now what I can do to finish up this round is put my hook right in the top of that first stitch we made and join with a slip stitch. Now, before I do that though, I may want to take a moment and get a second stitch marker and put it in the last stitch of the round. When you're working in joined rounds like this, it can be helpful to have that first and last stitch of each round marked to help you come back the correct direction and work into the correct stitches without accidentally working into that slip stitch. So now that we've got those stitches marked, I can go ahead and slip stitch to that very first stitch, just like so. Now, what I can do is pull on that tail to close up that ring. Now, for this particular project, we do want that center ring closed, but it doesn't have to be super duper tight. We're going to cover it up with those other 2 pieces of crochet, those 2 other circles. So don't pull so tight that you accidentally break your yarn. Just pull it so that it's mostly closed, and then you can weave in that end in either direction. And then we'll be ready to move on to round 2. Now, before you begin round 2, you'll want to go ahead and get your second color ready. In the original, this orange would have been the white yarn. So we're going to begin here with our black yarn, our color A, and I'm going to begin and I'm going to chain 1 and then turn. Now the instructions say to join and then turn, simply because that's how instructions are usually written, but I prefer to sort of do my chain and then turn. You can do it whatever order works for you. After that, we're going to work 2 half double crochets in each of the first 5 stitches. And this is where having those stitch markers can be really handy, because now that I've turned, my instinct would be to work in here, but that's that slip stitch. I want to come over here for our first stitch of round 2. So I'm going to yarn over and go right into that first marked stitch there and put in 1 half double crochet. Now this is our new first stitch of the round, so I'm going to take the stitch marker out of that stitch I just worked into and move it up to the top of this stitch. You can see at this point we're on the wrong side. Our little tail end is hanging out right there. I always like to leave that little tail hanging until I'm completely done with the project, because I can always tell at a glance this is the wrong side of our fabric. So we've got 1 half double crochet in that first stitch. Now we need to put a second one in there. There we are. So 2 half double crochets in the first stitch. And we want to do that all the way around, but we're going to change colors halfway. So we've worked into the first stitch. Now we're working to the second stitch. Put 2 stitches in there. 2 half double crochets in the third stitch. 1 and 2. Get that in there. There we go. 2 half double crochets in the fourth stitch. 1 and 2. And 2 half double crochets in the fifth stitch. So let me double check. I've put 1 in there. Let me make sure I'm on track. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 stitches. So we know we're on track. Now when we make this 10th stitch, the second half double crochet into the fifth stitch, we'll go in, yarn over and pull up our loop. But before we yarn over and pull through all 3 loops to finish our stitch, that's where we want to go ahead and switch to our second color. So I'm going to yarn over with that and pull that loop on up and through. Now I'll just let that tail hang there. I can weave it in when I'm all done. I'm also going to let my color A, which would in the original be the black, here we're using the green. I'm going to let that just hang out there as well. I'm not going to crochet over it in these next stitches. I'm going to let it be right here for when I want to come back and pick it up. That will make more sense in the next round. So now we continue on around, putting 2 half double crochets in each stitch, but now with the new color. Now, if you want to, you can crochet over this tail just to help tack it down. Pull it to the back if you'd like, the wrong side. I still want to weave in my end when I'm all done, but certainly you can crochet over it for a few stitches here just to help keep it out of the way a little bit while you do continue to crochet. So just like I did in the first 5 stitches, I'm going to continue putting 2 half double crochets in each stitch around. I think I'll go ahead and drop that end here. So I'm working into, would be the third stitch in this color. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 2 more in this stitch. There we go. And then finally, we've got a stitch marker in our next stitch. We know that's the last stitch we're going to work into for this round. So I'll go ahead and get that stitch marker out of the way. And I'll put 1 and then 2, our second half double crochet in there. I'm going to go ahead and mark that because now that is the last stitch of our round here. There we go. And then to finish up round 2, you can see it's half in each color. Here it is from the right side. We go ahead and slip stitch that first marked stitch right there. I like having that stitch marker in there. Makes it a little easier to get in there and make that slip stitch. And then, of course, we're going to turn and continue on with rounds 3 through 15. And now we're ready for round 3. Now, if you're following along with the written instructions, you'll notice there's a big note here that says for rounds 3 through 15, we're going to continue to work color A into all color A stitches and color B into all color B stitches. So the instructions don't include the color changing instructions, but you can see with your eyes what color you are working. So let's go ahead and work round 3 here together. We're going to start, of course, with our chain 1. We want to make sure to turn, whether we do it before or after the chain is up to you. And then for round 3, we're going to start our repeat. Our repeat is 2 half double crochets into the next stitch, 1 half double crochet in the stitch after that. standard for making a flat circle. So we yarn over, make sure we jump over here to this first marked stitch. It's going to look like you want to work there, but that's that slip stitch again. That's why having those stitch markers in there is so very handy. So we'll go ahead and put our first stitch here in round 3. Make sure to mark it. You'll notice we're now back to working from the right side. We've got that center tail there telling us our wrong side. So there's our first stitch. We want to put a second stitch in the same stitch there. So that's how our repeat begins. 2 half double crochets in the next stitch, half double crochet in the stitch after that. You'll notice I'm working that same color into that same color. 2 half double crochets in the next stitch, half double crochet in the stitch after that. Pull up a little bit more of that color here. I always like to control the tension with my hands rather than letting the yarn ball sort of pull back on my work. So let's see, we've got 2, 1, 2, 1. So we continue our pattern. 2 in this stitch. Our ends will sort of straighten out there. 1 in the next. 2 in the next stitch. 1 and 2. And 1 in the stitch after that. Now we've got 2 stitches left in this orange color, so we know we're on track. 2 in the next stitch. 1, 2, and 1 in the stitch after that. But we can see it's the last stitch in that color. So when we pull up this end, we aren't going to finish with this color. We're going to just go ahead and drop this right to the back of our work, pick up our new color, yarn over, and pull through. So we're going right back to color A. We just left it hanging right there, so it's all ready for us when we come back around. Now we continue on with that same stitch pattern. 2 half double crochets in the next stitch. 1 and 2. Get that in there. There we go. And 1 in the stitch after that. And again, I'm not crocheting over that other color. I'm just letting it hang out right there so that when we come back around, it'll be ready to pick up again. So we continue 2 half double crochets in the next stitch, 1 half double crochet in the stitch after that, repeating all the way around. Alrighty, so I've got one more stitch here to make to finish up round 3. You can see how handy it is to have that stitch marker there telling you right where to finish up so you don't accidentally skip any stitches you're not supposed to skip either. So then I simply make sure to mark the top of that last stitch as well. And then just like the other row here, and every row going forward through row 15 or round 15, we join with a slip stitch. And then we're ready to turn and work back the other direction for round 4. So now we continue rounds 4 through 13, increasing in this flat circle, working again all our color A stitches into color A and all our color B stitches into color B. Otherwise, they're the standard instructions for a flat circle, so you can follow along with the written instructions for that. Let's go ahead, though, and make one more round, round 4 together. Again, after that, we're just continuing to grow our circle, working these same sort of repeats in half double crochet stitches. So the repeats themselves will just continue to grow so that our circle continues to grow. So let's begin round 4. We're going to start with our chain 1, of course. We want to make sure to turn so that we're working this color into these color stitches. So for round 4, our repeat is 2 half double crochets in the next stitch, half double crochet in the next 2 stitches after that. So we yarn over, go right into that first marked stitch. Get that stitch marker on out of the way there. Make our first half double crochet for round 4, put our stitch marker into the top of it. And then a second stitch right back in that same stitch. Then half double crochet in the next 2 stitches, 1, and then in the stitch after that. There we go. Then do that repeat again. 2 half double crochets in the next stitch, 1, 2, half double crochet in each of the stitches after 2 stitches after that, 1, and then 2. Now, as you continue to make these rounds, if you find that your 2 yarn colors are starting to get twisted together, it's helpful to just take a moment and you can either untwist your project or untwist the skeins so that it makes it easier to continue making your stitches. Other than that, we just continue working in this same sort of pattern I've been showing you. In this case, it's 2, and then 2, 1 in each of the 2 after that. our increases will simply continue to increase, so to speak. We'll have 2 and then 3, 2 and then 4, 2 and then 5 as we continue to grow our circle. But we just keep working those same colors into the same one, all the way increasing through round 13. So for the sake of time, we're going to assume that I've continued working in pattern through round 13, continuing to grow our flat circle. For round 14 and round 15, we stop increasing. We start working even, but we're still doing the join and turn and switching colors. So let's go ahead and work a little facsimile of rounds 14 and 15 here together. So we're going to start with a chain 1 and then simply work your way around. No more increases. We still, like as I say though, want to make sure to change our colors. So we're simply going to work one color A stitch into each color A stitch and one color B stitch into each color B stitch, all the way around, join, turn, and do it once more for round 15. So now we're going to pretend we've gone all the way through round 15. You may see your cat bed or pet bed starting to cup a little bit. It might go that way as well. It doesn't really matter, of course. You can push it back either way, but a little bit of cupping at that point is normal because we're not increasing anymore. After you've finished round 15, then it's okay to go ahead and break color B. So this is going to be probably your white color if you're using the traditional colors. For me here, it's our orangey pink. So I'm going to go ahead and break that yarn. Of course, I want to leave a long enough tail to weave in our ends. But at this point, we're going to be using our color A or our black color to make the sides of our cat bed. So that begins in round 16. So after round 15, we only continue to work with color A. We're also going to stop turning. After round 15, you should have ended up here on the right side of our fabric. And now we can continue to just stitch with round 15. If you find that, you've got any other ends or anything in your way, if for some reason some of them ended up in front, you can go ahead and just push all those to the back with a yarn needle or with your hook. So for rounds 16 through 19, we continue with color A. We simply chain 1 and half double crochet in each stitch around. And then join. Again, we're not going to be turning anymore. We're just going to be working in joined rounds. Rounds 16 through 19 will start to build up that first side along the side of our cat bed. So after round 19, you should see your sides starting to come up like this. We've still got our wrong side of the fabric here, sort of on the outside of our bowl. And if you found that after you crocheted it went like this, it's not a big deal. We just push it just like that. So now we're going to say here on our little demo bowl, or demo cat bed, I should say, that we are ready for round 20, which is the last round for the base here where we increase. It just creates the little folding lip for the sides of our cat bed. So for round 20, we start with a chain of 1, and then we half double crochet in the next 12 stitches. So that's the first one there that I joined to. So I'll go ahead and put my stitch marker in there. I had that ready to go. So there's 1, and then 2, 3, 4, 5. You get the idea. On my little sample here, I don't quite have as many stitches, of course, as you'll have on your full size, but we do half double crochet in the first 12, then 2 half double crochets in the stitch after that. So not nearly as many increases in this round. We're only gaining a few stitches, but it's just enough to give us that little bit of a lip. So our repeat here for round 20 is half double crochet in 12, and then half double crochet twice in the stitch after that. So just a little bit of increasing here for round 20. Like I say, that just a little bit of increase creates that little bit of lip. After that, rounds 20 through 21, we go right back to half double crochet evenly to create the rest of the side. So let's take a look at what that looks like on our finished bed. So here are those rows on the full-size yin yang cat bed. You can see here we've got our last 2 rounds worked evenly, then we worked evenly in the black. We had our round 20 here. I know it's kind of hard to see, but we'd have just a little bit of increasing right there, and that makes it really easy and lets us guides us where to fold that over. Those last few rounds, rounds 21 through 24, are right here, creating the other side of that lip. Again, if you wanted to, you could stuff this with fiber fill and sew this last round sort of down to that last round of black there to create a more sturdy lip, but I wanted to keep it just open and foldable to make it so much easier to wash and dry. So after you've made that base portion, you just go ahead and finish off that end, weave in your ends, and then we just are going to make these 2 spiral circles that go on top to create the yin yang shape. So the next thing we need to do is make 2 circles, which we make in a spiral, that are then sewn onto the top of our cat bed to create the yin yang look. So what we want to do is, as I say, make one in each color, one in color A and one in color B, whatever your colors are. Here I'm going to take this color and I'm going to start round 1 again with a magic circle. So these are going to be essentially the same instructions that we use for the cat bed, but now instead of changing colors and using turned rounds, we're now just going to be working in a spiral with one color at a time. So we've got our magic circle here ready to go. I'm going to get that started just as I did before. Get that locked together and then chain 1. And now what I'm going to do is first I'm going to work a single crochet into the ring, like so. And then I'm going to work 9 half double crochets into the ring. So we're still going to have a total of 10 stitches. So there's our second stitch, third, on around until you have a total of 10 stitches here into the ring for round 1. All right, so here I am at the end of round 1 of the circles. You'll notice I haven't joined, but I do have a stitch marker right in that first stitch. When working in spirals, as we are when we're making these circles, it's super important to keep a stitch marker in the first stitch of each round so you can know when each new round is beginning. The final stitch, not as important. We're not going to join, we're not going to turn, we're just going to keep working around in the same direction. Otherwise, the general instructions and stitch counts are the same. We had 10 stitches in round 1. Now we're going to put 2 half double crochets in each stitch around for a total of 20. Same way we started the cat bed itself, but again, we don't have to join, we don't have to turn, and we don't have to change colors. So let's go ahead and make round 2 here together. I'm going to go right into that first stitch, move that stitch marker out of the way for a moment, make the first half double crochet of this round, and put my stitch marker right in the top of that stitch. There we go. And then, since it's round 2, I want to put a second half double crochet in there. And then, as I say, continue on around 2 half double crochets in each stitch around. Now with spirals, because we don't have that jog at the beginning of the round, you can see how it's still smooth there. That's why it is so important for us to keep that stitch marker in there. Otherwise, you wouldn't really know. You wouldn't be able to tell where the round began only because of that jog where it ended. So again, if you don't have stitch markers, I do recommend adding them to your arsenal. But in the meantime, you can always use a scrap piece of yarn or even a safety pin or a paper clip, whatever works for you. But believe me, it makes it a whole lot easier to have the stitch marker in there when you are working in spirals. So for this round, of course, like I say, it's round 2. I'm just putting 2 half double crochets in each stitch around. When I get to the end, I don't need to join, I don't need to turn. For these, I'm always going to be working from the right side of the fabric. So I'm almost all the way around here in round 2. You can see I've got my stitch marker right there. So before, when we had 2 stitch markers going, we knew we wanted to work into that last stitch marker. Now we are going to know when we've come all the way around, when we work into the stitch before the stitch marker. Need just a little bit more yarn here to finish this round. There's 1 and 2. There we go. So, as I say, this is simple spirals, and I do have another video on working spirals, but that's about all there is to it. I'm just tightening that center up a little bit more there. So we continue working, same basic stitch pattern, just now, like I say, we're working in spirals instead, still all half double crochets. We just had that first single crochet at the beginning of that first round. For these spirals, we continue working just like this through round 7. So they get a little bit bigger. And then round 8 is actually just a few stitches that help us sort of even that out so we don't have a big jog at the end of our spiral. So for round 8, when you've continued increasing and working all your stitches through round 6, or excuse me, through round 7, all of which of course are included in the free pattern, when we come to round 8, when we get to that stitch marker for that first stitch, we instead of continuing in half double crochet, we want to sort of taper down that jog. So first we make a single crochet, and you can go ahead and mark that stitch if you want to. Don't really have to, but you can. and then slip stitch in the stitch after that. And then from there, we go ahead and break our yarn. So you can see now we have brought that angle back down into a nice smooth circle. However, when we break this yarn, we don't want to just cut that 4 or 6 inches for weaving in. We want to make sure to leave enough length to sew the circle onto our cat bed. So when we go to cut that yarn, what I like to do is a pretty simple little technique. I'm going to lay out whatever piece I want to sew on. In this case, it's this size circle. It would, of course, be a bigger circle on your full-size cat bed. But then I take my yarn and I just go right around the perimeter about 3 times. Especially on a smaller object, I'll go ahead and do 3. If it's something really big, I might only do 2.5. But you can see it's not, super close measuring or anything like that. But I just go around the perimeter about 3 times, and then I will go ahead and cut the yarn. So it's not maybe super scientific, but in my experience, I find that this works, and it always gives me more than enough length. And frankly, I'd always prefer to have a little extra rather than to come up short and then have to cut another length of yarn. So after you've got that cut, you can just pull up on that end like so. And then, of course, you can use your yarn needle to sew your circles onto your cat bed. Alrighty, so to sew your circles to your cat bed, you're going to need a tapestry needle or a yarn needle, one with a big enough eye to fit the Bernat blanket through. Now, before you start sewing, what I do recommend, and of course these aren't quite to scale, but I do recommend that you take those stitch markers again, bring in that little bowl of them here, and lay your circles out over your cat bed and use the stitch markers to pin them into place before you start sewing. So how you're going to lay them out, and again, this is not exactly to scale here, but you'll have 2 circles here, one in each color. So you want to basically find that center where we did all color A of the cat bed and line up one edge right there. Then I actually like to take that single crochet of that final round and line it up to the outside. And you just want to basically cover up that straight line there from the center straight out to the edge. And then you would do the same thing with the other colored circle right there. Then after you've got them in place and you've used your stitch markers to pin them down, I literally just go right through the loops and then through a couple loops of the cat bed underneath. And I can pin it down right where I want it. Then we take the end of our circle and put it on our yarn needle. Now, there are a few different ways that you could sew this down, and I actually tried a couple different ones. At first, I thought I would want to whip stitch it, but after working with this a little bit, I realized for this particular project, I believe that the back stitch is going to give you a better result. So again, you can use whichever technique you like. And of course, I'm not exactly lined up very evenly here. I'm going to fake it a little bit for our demonstration. I'm just going to bring my end over here and pretend this is where the end of my yarn was attached. So I have something to sew to here. Let me pull that through here. A little bit of camera trickery, if you will. But basically, to sew our pieces on, the technique for the back stitch, which I do have a separate tutorial on my YouTube channel here, and I'll make sure to link it as well. It's linked in the pattern, and it will be linked in the video tutorial on the blog. We essentially go through just pick a stitch close to where your yarn end is here and get it tacked down. And then, if we look closely, you can see there's a stitch here and a stitch here. We want to go forward, just come right up through the bottom of the cat bed. It doesn't matter what the bottom looks like. That's going to be on the floor. Go to that 1, 2 ahead, come up through that stitch, and pull your yarn all the way through. Take your time with it. We don't want to put knots in the yarn. Then go back to the stitch before and go down through that one. A little fuzzy there. There we go. Alrighty. Now, look closely before I pull it all the way through. We're going down into that one. We came up through that one. That's one we came up through. I'm going to go to the next one and go up through that one. Again, just take your time, pull that all the way through, and then down through the previous one. All right. So now I'm going to do one more stitch here. Keep it going. See, we came up through that one, down through that one. Now we go to the next stitch in line and come up through there. So that is basically how to do the back stitch. Again, if you find that when you start sewing your circles on, you like the look that you're getting with a whip stitch or maybe a different technique better, that's absolutely fine. I prefer to do the back stitch because I liked the look that it gave the circles, but I also felt like it gave it the most secure sewing down. Whip stitch would probably be as good, but with the running stitch, or excuse me, the back stitch, not the running stitch, I know that it is on here really securely, so the cats aren't going to be able to pull it off. So you just continue to sew it all the way around. Again, having it tacked down with those stitch markers first will be really helpful. So here we have the full-sized one, a little easier maybe to see with the black and white. But you can see here we've got one circle here and one circle here. They cover up that seam, they cover up that solid color first round, and they just make it look like that yin-yang shape. Now, after you've sewn on those circles, and of course you can weave in your ends, you can see here, the very bottom, we don't need to be precious or pretty about it. This goes right on the floor, and the main thing is to sew it safely so that it is safe for your pets. But you can see we've just covered up that color change with our circles. Then, of course, we've got our sides. We've already talked about those. We just flip those right over at that row 20, smooth it all out nice and flat for your favorite pets, and you'll be all set. And that's how to crochet the Yin Yang cat bed. Again, you'll find that free pattern on mooglyblog.com. Thanks so much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.